please use the chat functionality here on Microsoft Teams to write your questions, and we will take them at the end of the session. With that, to start us off, I want to invite President of U.S. India Business Council, Nisha Biswal, and the SVP for International Strategy and Global Initiatives at U.S. Chamber of Commerce to set the stage and take us forward from here. Nisha, all yours.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, and thank you all of you for joining us today. Before I commence with the program, let me just provide a proper welcome and introduction to our guest speakers today for this fantastic lineup and conversation that we are engaging in. First of all, Diane Farrell, who is no stranger to the U.S. India corridor and has been active for several decades on advancing the relationship and the economic partnership between the United States and India. Diane is the acting Undersecretary for International Trade at the Department of Commerce, where she has held various positions that have been very active on the U.S.-India partnership. She's also a very proud alumnus, and I should say we are so proud to have her as an alumnus of the U.S. India Business Council as well. Along with Diane, we are also very excited to have Deepak Bagla, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Invest India, the National Investment Promotion Facilitation Agency of the Government of India. Deepak, of course, also has been very active on advancing India's ties with the United States and around the world in many different positions that he has held throughout his career, including at the World Bank and positions engaging across Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. But we think he has a soft corner for the U.S.-India corridor, and he has certainly been a very active promoter of two-way trade and investment. Nishit Desai, you know, the word innovation and law firm generally don't go together, but with Nishit Desai Associates, one can say he has been named year after year after year as one of the most innovative law firms, not just in India, but around the world. And we're proud to have him as a member of our India Advisory Council and a key member of the U.S. India Business Council. Adrian Mutton, who is the CEO of Sanam S4. Sanam has been such a critically important member of USIBC, not only in terms of what they do in the education space, but frankly, Sanam has been critical in supporting kind of market entry into the Indian market for a whole range of enterprises, nonprofits, educational institutions, etc., and has been an important voice in expanding the U.S.-India corridor. So we're very pleased to have Sanam join us and Adrian join us today. Thank you all of you who have come in today, and I just wanted to give a few framing remarks. But before I do that, you know, part of what we want to do here is really encourage the two-way trade and investment opportunities in the U.S.-India corridor. And to that effect, we're really proud, first and foremost, to be able to launch the Doing Business in India report that has been compiled by Nishit Desai Associates and Sanam S4. So we're going to go ahead and put the cover of that up on the screen if we can, but also in the chat you will have a link and an access to that report. It's a phenomenal compendium of the issues and the rules and the regulatory understandings of doing business in India, the ways in which India is moving its policies to facilitate trade and investment. It's just a encyclopedic work that I'm sure people will really appreciate. Thank you for the partnership of Sanam and Nishit Desai in putting this together. we will also send a copy of this out to all of you as participants in today's series. The series that we are launching here, the Accelerate to 500, is really about how do the United States and India achieve that ambitious goal that was put forward by then Vice President Biden during the Obama administration as kind of the benchmark of what we thought the U.S. and India should aspire to. Back then, we were talking about 100 million in two-way trade and investment and a quintupling. We have made progress towards that goal. We are now at over 150 billion in two-way trade, but we know that the potential is much greater. So the Accelerate to 500 series initiative is really looking at the ways in which we get to that benchmark and how the corridor on both sides, on the U.S. side and on the India side, can expand and grow. Our Destination India series last year showed us the power and the potential of the state and local engagement. We know that the growth is happening in our cities and states, in India and in the United States. And to truly be able to take advantage of the opportunities, we need to be able to dive deeper and engage beyond the national and into the subnational. Destination India was our deep dives into Indian states, but we also want to make sure that we are engaging with U.S. states and cities, looking at both American businesses in regions across the country that are looking to expand or grow into India, as well as opportunities for investment in the U.S. And in our states and cities here in America. And so the Accelerate to 500 series is very much focused on deepening that subnational corridor, the subnational opportunities through a focus on states and cities. As we get into the conversation here, I want to open this up. I want to open this up to our panelists, to our guests today, to start exploring why India. What is it about the U.S.-India corridor, and why is it the moment now as we are looking at kind of emerging from the COVID-imposed slowdowns that we all have experienced in the past year to what we expect to be strong recoveries in the United States and India, and the importance of this corridor. And so first, let me call upon Diane Farrell to give us the perspective from the U.S. government, from the Department of Commerce, and what she sees here. Diane, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks so much. It is absolutely wonderful to see you first and foremost, Nisha, but also Abhishek, the whole crew at USIBC. And of course, it's been really great as people have entered this chat to recognize so many names. I'll call them fellow travelers, Nisha, as you can probably imagine, in terms of how we have worked assiduously over the years to make sure that we strengthen our ties at all levels, not just economic, but also people to people, as we have such a strong diaspora connection that should automatically feed into even greater economic success. It's funny, Nisha, I did have in my notes as well, I absolutely remember then Vice President Biden's visit to India, and I think it was a speech that he actually gave in Mumbai that was hosted by Bank of America, where he actually put down that marker of 500 billion. And I think it is one that is attainable, and it's one that we want to remind the vice president, now president, about as it relates to our going forward in partnership with India. It's also great that, of course, the president, now President Biden, and the prime minister did speak last week on a call. It was also terrific to see Ambassador Sandhu's op-ed just very recently, where he called about a renewal of our unique partnership. And I do think that that's a good starting off point. Clearly, we at the Commerce Department are very eager to see Governor Raimondo confirmed, as well as Ambassador Tai, because again, when we talk about the going forward and our ambitious program for U.S. India strengthened economic ties, we're going to need all of our principles in place to do so. Very encouraging to see Minister Goyal's comments recently as well, just embracing the idea that it's a fresh start and that again, he has such a deep knowledge and understanding of the relationship as he's been in his position, his most recent position over the last few years, that I really feel confident that we're hitting the ground running. And so I think that's going to be very positive. You're right. We have talked about the progress that we've made over the last 10 years when we look at the bilateral trade numbers. But we all know, given the size of our economies, that we could and should be doing much better. And again, this is an opportunity for renewal, an opportunity to hit the reset button to a degree. Having this marvelous report that my friends at Sanam S4, Nishit Desai, and USIBC have put out once again is I think going to be a really good compendium, a good beginning point. And so I commend all of you for your success in this, and really look forward to pouring through it myself to see how we can pick up ideas on the government side to be helpful and useful. The pandemic cooperation is a good example of again, how private sector, government, the two governments have worked together to manage the global pandemic. And I want to say I'm really happy to report that in spite of where we were and have been, in July, we still held the CEO Forum and maintained a dialogue, a commercial dialogue. And I will tell you, having been privileged to be in on the call with the U.S. CEOs and the Indian CEOs who participated, as well as the minister and our then Secretary, Wilbur Ross, it was one of the most productive conversations that I had heard in a long time in terms of exactly how the private sector felt that they could be engaged both in the current pandemic situation, but wanting to look beyond that and look to the rebuilding of our economies, look to perhaps taking advantage of some of the learnings, and really the expression I would use is trying to make lemonade out of lemons in terms of dealing with the tragedies of COVID-19, but how we can strengthen our ties and how industry can be an important partner. So that actually, I want to tell you, I mean, it went really, really well. And under the commercial dialogue, our colleagues continue to work on business climate issues, standards, travel and tourism. And I'm going to now add climate simply because, as we're hearing from the Biden administration, with the encouragement of the Modi government, a renewed interest and commitment to climate change. There are all kinds of opportunities for cooperation and collaboration and private sector engagement in that area. So looking forward to that. On the investment side, we love working with Invest India. They've been wonderful partners with us for years. Perhaps in the Q&A, I'll give you a little bit more flavor for the State Spotlight series webinars that we've held very successfully. I do want to put in a plug for Select USA, our big event. Once it will be virtual. Sadly, we had to cancel it last year again because of the issue with regard to COVID. But we will be doing an amazing virtual event, and it literally will be on a 24-hour cycle, so that we can make sure that we are capturing all of our overseas partners. And so stay tuned and look for more. And I will say that the Indian delegation has always been among the largest. And that's been a source of pride, frankly, to the team at Commerce. So we want to make sure that all of our partners are joining us. And I know, Anisha, that USIBC will be a wonderful advocate on behalf of participation. Obviously, FDI, therefore, is important. And so, with Invest India, we've seen growth take place on the Indian side to the U.S. We've gone from 10.2 billion in 2018 to 16.7 billion in 2019, the last reportable figures. On the U.S. side, we're at 46 billion U.S. investments into India by our calculations. So, again, we see the opportunities. And the only thing, and I'll leave you with this, is we want to make sure that in this time, when we have learned about some of the weaknesses, some of the challenges in the global supply chain, and we all are very, very familiar with them. Right now, we're dealing with a semiconductor issue when it comes to automotive manufacturing, for example. While we understand that we've had to learn to adapt, or we have found where there have been weaknesses in terms of dependencies when it comes to the global supply chain, this is not the time for folks to just think that they can go it alone, that somehow the whole notion of globalization as it relates to the supply chain specifically was a bad idea or is a dangerous or too much of a challenging concept going forward. Really quite the opposite. As I've been saying about learnings generally, when it comes to how we've had to adapt to a virtual world, how we have had to come up with solutions to problems that we never even imagined before the pandemic began. What we really need to do is take a step back, understand where we had strengths and weaknesses when it comes to those needs that our economies have had, that our citizens have had, and make it even stronger. And to me, that signals an even greater and deeper partnership when we start talking about the relationship, the economic relationship, the strategic relationship between the United States and India. So I am very excited for the discussion today. Look forward to hearing my fellow panelists' comments, and most especially, Nisha, hearing from your wonderful members and guests as they have questions or comments. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Your passion for the U.S. India corridor comes across, and I'm glad that there is so much optimism. Deepak, carrying on that, we heard from Minister Goyal yesterday, who joined us for the State of U.S. India Business. And both Ambassador Sandhu and Minister Goyal talked about the fact that there needs to be more ambition in the U.S. India corridor. That when we have a strategic partnership that is as robust as the U.S. India partnership, that our economic partnership needs to follow suit. India has been taking a lot of important steps in throughout the COVID period to really create the economic reforms that can make it more competitive and attractive as a investment destination, but also a supply chain destination. And certainly you and your team have been a big part of that. Talk to us a little bit about how you have been trying to position India in that global marketplace, and the steps that you want our audience to know about.
Thanks, Nisha, and thank you really to you and the entire team for getting us together. And I was going to ask Diane on the mantle behind her. The picture wasn't very clear, but I was hoping to spot a memento from India, and I was asking her to show us which one was that. But I'll ensure, Diane, all the ones at the back, which is the one from India?
All of
we have to make amends on that one, Diane. Not to worry, we will. That will be the first pillar of strengthening this relationship. Now,
I'll send you my address in Connecticut.
Thank you, Diane. No, really. I'll tell you what I think where we are today with this relationship is concerned. And Nisha, you said I have a soft spot. Of course I do. I mean, that's where I went to school, and if I recollect, my master's thesis was on the India-US relationship. And title at that time was Blow Hot, Blow Cold. But obviously, much has changed now. That was quite many decades ago. I think where we are today is at a very interesting inflection point where the numbers today have no reflection on what they will be 36 to 48 months later. Now, what am I trying to say? Diane mentioned about the CEO forum, and then we are talking about it from the government side. What's interesting? Both the government side and the business side on this relationship are working in the same direction. And that is all about getting it to make it happen more. The ambition is there. The potential is there. The potential was always there, but now it is becoming easier to access. So what has happened right through, and why do I say that this number is going to change dramatically over the next 48 months? It's because two big things have happened in India, which have really taken off in the past 24 to 36 months. One is the access to that opportunity, and the other is ease of access to that opportunity. And one of the biggest beneficiaries of that is the business from the US. And the reason why I say that, because US is India's biggest partner, both not just in trade, but also in investment. Let me just share a few statistics with you. And this, Nisha, I think we discussed it once. This is from the Orbis Moody's database. Even during the lockdown last year, from January to December, projects from US to India, 191. This is not my data. This is Orbis data. Okay, Nisha? And from US to Vietnam, 17, US to Malaysia, 17, US to Indonesia, 6, US to Thailand, 15. Even during the lockdown. What I'm seeing, and you ask me, and that is where I begin with this. When I started the lockdown in March of last year, so we have ourselves indicated investment. That is where I'm hand holding with a dedicated relationship manager to each of the investors which are looking at India, to grounding their plans and creating their plans. The indicative investment of that plan, of those total plans, which I was hand holding myself, was 73 billion last March. After this COVID, as we are in February today, that number is 163. And it's across 47 sectors. What I'm trying to say is that even during the lockdown, that entire underlying momentum of onshoring and reshoring of supply chains, be it a large refrigeration company from the US, be it a footwear company from the US, be it a chemical company from the US. I'm just talking of the US, but these are of many other countries too, or be it an electronics firm, which has been a big hit, by the way, the production linked incentive scheme, which was announced recently. We are seeing a huge movement of supply chains moving to India. And add to that the Atmanirbhar concept of the Prime Minister, which is basically strengthening India's existing strengths. Primarily, if you look at it, my mid-market, the MSMEs. And these MSMEs fit very well into global supply chains because these are the guys who will supply those supply chain requirements and support them when they move in. So this is where I see now this big movement happening in a big manner. And as we all know, I think everyone has commended the government that even during the lockdown, if you look at it, all that ease of doing business efforts. And the very interesting thing, Nisha, which you have done, and full points to you and the team, and Diane mentioned about it, is at the state level. And you've seen the big change which is happening at the state level. By the way, just on, I know before I conclude, let me just bring you back to my last point. There's a very interesting initiative which has just been launched and the Prime Minister directed it and the team is working on it. It is one district, one product. We have close to 740 districts in India. We are picking up identifying one or two products from each of these districts, and you will soon see a huge effort where you will be a part of that. And many others, and a large number of US businesses and global businesses, where we'll see these products fitting into global supply chains or seeing these products reach the homes of people across the globe. So a lot is happening. We all know about it, and I'm sure Nishit's report carries a lot of that stuff. But what I'm saying is, I think uh, even the moment this virus leaves us, you will see a complete moving around the bend into a vertical spike of this relationship, both on trade and investment, and numbers changing in a very fast track manner. I've completed my 4 times. I take it back to you, Nisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak, and absolutely, I think you hit upon, the opportunities that we see moving forward. Nishit, you have been tracking many of the regulatory policies and changes in those policies and the implications for foreign investors. Talk to us a little bit about the changing environment that you've been seeing and how that impacts investment flows coming in. Deepak talked about the robust flows that are continuing to come in even during a time of COVID. Walk us through that. Nishit, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you. So first of all, Nisha, thank you so much for putting this together, and Diane and Deepak, and it's wonderful to be in your company. I'm so delighted that you launched this report, first of all, and thank you so much. I think I've seen it all. In fact, I'm a young lawyer with about 47 years in practice, and I've seen the legal environment since 1973, and I specialized globalization in 1977. At that point of time, India was Indianizing everything, and and now we are seeing a lot of a new way of doing things. So in fact, it has been wonderful to see the whole progression that has happened in last some years. It has accelerated tremendously, and I believe that 500 billion. I believe numbers is one thing, but nothing is impossible. And if we put together our mind, do right things, I'm sure we'll be reaching there. As I see let me just first impression that people get about legal system is that the case is gone forever, because in India litigation and contract enforceability have been major issues for a long period of time. But look at what happened last year, and as soon as pandemic happened, lockdown happened, most courts went in for e-court system or virtual hearings. And the speed with which the judges and the lawyers came to grips with that, it's amazing. I could never believe that we'll ever do it so fast. So although on one side we are all a little sad about people trapped into pandemic, but if you see the opportunities that came up to speed up, and people came to grips with technology very fast. I believe technology is going to be key driver. I see opportunities in three major areas. I've seen, and that's what we are experiencing. First, in financial services sector, particularly private equity, venture capital funds. They are the immediate source of investment in India, because if you have to put manufacturing, it takes some years and stuff like that, which will go on parallel. But I think immediate opportunities for investment and financial services sector, including insurance and many other things I won't go into detail. A lot of changes have happened in the regulatory framework relating to alternate investment funds, real estate funds, infrastructure funds, and I think there's great opportunity. And so that's one. Second is in the area of TMT, technology, media, entertainment, and telecom. Huge opportunities, and we are seeing a lot of activities at this point in time. And I think that's like second opportunity. And third opportunity we see is in pharma, healthcare. These are the three areas where we have seen major activity. Of course, there are other areas also that are coming up, but I'm just mentioning that these have been the major three opportunity segments. And in each of these areas, there have been a lot of regulatory changes happening. And one way in which I would look at to streamline the past, coming up to the speed, including bankruptcy law, and I can go on, and I can, I don't want to bore everybody with those situations. But one is to correct the past, move fast forward. But next thing I would urge, I think US and India can cooperate, is shape the future of law. As we go along, we are going to see a lot of activities in blockchain, especially in financial and other sectors as well. We are going to see activities in drones and even flying cars. Uber Elevate had indicated 5 cities in the world. You remember, Nisha, one of them for launching flying cars, and Mumbai was one of them. But my question was that flying cars will come, but will be ready with our regulatory environment. So we should start preparing for Industrial Revolution 4. And same way AR, VR, IoT, 3D printing, all these are the things to come. And we should start preparing for the future now. I think that is where there is huge opportunity for sharing of ideas and sharing of research, and what kind of regulatory or legal regime we need for the future. There are lots of issues that are coming up, including antitrust and other kind of stuff. So I would think that let us work on specifics of some of this future issues that are going to come, and if we collaborate, we'll create a much better environment. Otherwise, opportunity comes, and we don't want to miss out IR4 this time. What happened with us in the old industrial revolution, I think we missed out a big way. I think this time we have one opportunity to participate in that. So I think this is where, as I see the opportunities, as was mentioned earlier, even in education, nobody understood how much opportunity. And we are seeing so much happening in that sector. But it is also two-way traffic ultimately. I would also see that I would hope to see more relaxation of immigration regulations in the US. And, if we can work on that, that would be good. Also, on a high level, we are looking at a conclusion of a bilateral investment trading. There are some tax issues. I think tax, in fact, I've been normally very critical of most of the past budgets many a times. As lawyers, what else you do. This time, I think there have been very good provisions. First thing, no tax rise happened, no pandemic tax came in, and everybody was greatly relieved. Number two, that there have been significant benefits announced in what is called new region called Gujarat uh, International Financial Services City. I think it's a very interesting project. So there are 600 kilometers of area which is pronounced as a foreign territory for many of the laws as far as India gets. So you can shape completely a new legal regime in that, a new regulatory framework. So that is another area that is very important to look at, and it's an offshore midshore center. So a lot of private equity and other funds are getting, and it is a platform to capture not only Indian market but also for the global markets. So I believe that the opportunity is just not in India and with India, but also on a global basis. I don't know how long I have time to speak, but I'm not going to bore everybody with that. It has been a great pleasure for us to be operating in the US for last 20 years. So we have office in Palo Alto, New York, apart from Munich and Singapore, etc. I would say India. And we are seeing so much of activity at this point in time. I'm myself surprised with number of inquiries, number of people are curious to see what can be done in India. And together we can create a corridor. I think that's another thing that I would really urge everybody to look at GIFT City. And they also have a sandbox regime, so you can experiment and come up with new ideas. Um, and as far as I think the environment is concerned, at this point in time, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and let us capture that. I hope I have not exceeded my time at
No,
all.
not at all. Thank you so much, Nishit. And I know that you do a lot of thinking on a lot of issues. And so if anyone wants to dive more deeply, please feel free to visit his website where you can find papers on a number of these topics that he touched upon. But Adrian, let me turn to you. You know, as firms, as businesses, large and small, think about entering into the Indian market, it can sometimes be daunting as you look at the overlay of state and national policies and you try to navigate a very complex environment. Tell us how folks should be looking at the India opportunity and how they can kind of create a more ease of investing and entering. What are the kinds of advice that you give to your clients in that space?
Thank you very much, Nisha, and thank you for having us as part of this discussion. We were delighted, as always, to partner with Mr. Desai and his firm on putting together a report that outlines a number of the practical steps that need to be taken to enter India. The first thing I will say is that there's an enormous amount of support for US business going into India, and I think companies underestimate how much support there actually is. You and I and Diane and Deepak and Nishith have covered a lot of air miles and a lot of ground in India, building the bridges to enable organizations, not just the multinationals, but the MSMEs that Deepak referred to in India, connecting with MSMEs in the United States. And equally in the United States, MSMEs are a core part of the economic agenda. And so we, with yours and Diane's and Deepak and Nishith's support, have for the last 10 plus years really been building the frameworks that enable US companies to explore and expand successfully into the market. To set the context and why companies should be considering India right now, I think India's time for me has come in a way that perhaps it hadn't anticipated. I spent a lot of time living in India at the time that Prime Minister Modi in 2014 and 15 launched a number of his major digital initiatives, which Deepak was a big part of the campaign in doing so. And those three key strands to the Prime Minister's Digital India campaign were about enabling the facilities and the digital infrastructure for citizens to operate, and that also extended to businesses. So it's the cell phone infrastructure, it's the internet bandwidth, it's the connectivity right across the country into the deepest parts of rural India. There was a significant effort at moving the government's infrastructure online and enabling people to do business via the internet rather than having to rely on paper and people to get registrations, approvals, companies incorporated, and so on. And that genuinely has significantly increased the ease of doing business in the country. And it's no surprise that India has jumped, I think, 79 places in the ease of doing business World Bank's guide. And I think a big part of it is that ability to come in and do business electronically at all levels, through government, through banking and beyond. And then, of course, the market has been opened up. India's historically been a very cash-driven economy. And in 2014, the Prime Minister pushed for financial inclusion. It was an enormous effort at bringing hundreds of millions of people into the financial system. And that inevitably has a trickle-down effect onto the economy in general, and of course those businesses that then participate in it on a B2B or B2C basis. So whilst we were all incredibly anxious about what the pandemic would mean for India, as we were for and continue to be for the US and other parts of the world, I feel like the effort that Prime Minister Modi put in 2014 to digitize India's economy and infrastructure is now going to really pay dividends. And we're quite excited about that prospect. So I think when companies come into India from the US for the first time, firstly, they should look at India as as part of their Asia reboot strategy, which for many reasons, I think companies are having to do now, whether that be for supply chain, for access to markets, for service and support. And India offers a much easier place to do business than I think people realize. There's the support both in the United States through USIBC, through the state support agencies across the country, of course, through the government of India and their embassy and consulates. And we've been part of the Department of Commerce's framework to really drive the messaging into the US, and will continue to be a strong partner to them and yourselves to get the message across that support is there. If you come into India right now, you've got a wonderful digital infrastructure to enable yourselves to operate on remotely from the United States, and you can actually get a lot of stuff done remotely that you couldn't get done before as a foreign shareholder. The big thing that we've seen, Nisha, through the pandemic, which has caught us a little bit by surprise, but positively, is that many US companies are using India as a regional base now for Asia. With the inability to travel, their ability to tap into a highly qualified English-speaking population in the right time zone with access to the Asian markets has really accelerated certainly our demand for services to provide US companies a presence, either full-time, part-time, or in a hybrid mode, to get them not just embedded into India itself, but as a regional play. And we're very excited about what that prospect brings, because historically, those that have used India as a service partner from the United States have done that back into the United States market for R&D work, additional support and service online, of course. But we have seen that move very, very quickly to support the wider Asian region. So we're genuinely excited about India's role in the Indo-Pacific now from a service perspective. And with recent labour laws, commitment to continuing to drive a reasonable tax agenda, as Nishit Desai has said, corporate tax has come down a lot. A lot of the reasons that companies several years ago may have thought India was just too much of a mountain to climb I think, can find another way in without having to hike over the Himalayas. And I see opportunity in abundance at the moment.
Well, thank you so much, Adrian. The questions are starting to flow into the chat. And so, Diane, I'm going to turn to you. One of the questions that folks have had here is on the IP regime in India, and whether that's an area of concern, particularly as we start thinking about, the future-facing technologies. People have talked about in the chat, climate, and you referenced the focus on climate and clean technology and advanced technology. In your opinion, how has the IP discussion between the United States and India been, and what are the ways in which we can think about, collaboration on advanced technology?
Well, IP has been a constant conversation point for many, many years. And I don't think I'm telling anybody on this call that it's been part of the challenging discussions that we have at times had with our Indian government counterparts when it comes to wanting to push further ahead in terms of creating trade agreements, resolving issues like the GSP, et cetera. I have a personal view on this that I have shared with people. It's not an official view per se, but I do believe that as innovation continues to grow and thrive in India, there is a greater appreciation for the need for protection. And I think that it was an interesting comment that Deepak made actually about even bothering to look at statistics right now as a predictor is probably folly, simply because we know that we're going to be looking at a different world, literally a different global construct once we get through the pandemic and the damage that it's done to our individual economies as well as to the global economy. So my view is that to be perfectly candid, it's likely to continue to be a bit of a sticking point, as every company these days describe themselves as a technology company first, regardless of what they do. This will continue to be an issue that's going to be front and center. But I do believe that as the concerns about protections normalize between the U.S. and India, the U.S. and other countries as well, but India in particular, because of its extraordinary innovation history and capacity, it's going to be a front and center issue, and it's going to touch every single industry. So that's where I think we're going to be. But I truly believe that as partners, we can work through this, but we just have to acknowledge that innovation needs to be rewarded. And therefore, delicate IP issues need to be respected, and we need to work something through. Doesn't matter what the industry is. It really doesn't matter. It can be pharmaceuticals. It can be manufacturing of goods. It can be computer programming. It just doesn't matter. It's at the center of probably what will be one of our most important discussions going forward as our trade officials are confirmed and begin to dialogue.
Thank you, Diane. Fully agree that as India continues to be a creator of content, of innovation, that's going to impact the IP conversation as well. Deepak, we've seen that U.S.-China trade tensions, India-China trade tensions have also forced people to really think about global supply chains and think about what it means to de-risk and diversify. I know India has been doing much to create an ecosystem that can bring in some of that investment that is looking to de-risk and diversify. Talk to us a little bit about how India is positioning for that, and also how you're thinking about it in terms of kind of the future economy. Yes, obviously major focus on manufacturing, but how are the ways in which you're also looking at this from the perspective of the industries of the future?
Nisha, the fact is capital flows where it gets a return. It gets a return where there is opportunity. So first, let's have a look at it as a market opportunity, and you are the best person on that one. You got Adrian and everyone. It sits as the single largest market opportunity sitting going forward in the future. And this opportunity is going to be growing. I mean, look at the IMF numbers. For the next 24 months, the fastest growing economy on the planet remains India. So just before we went into this little virus, what were we? We were the youngest, largest, fastest, and we retain that position as we get out of it. Now, what is happening within the system? The first is when you're talking of the India risk factors, and here I look at myself from my previous life as a private equity investor. What India is doing is de-risking business models which are going to be operating in the country. What do I mean by that? One of the highest risk factors in any economy and in any polity is the initial phase of construction of a project. We are de-risking that. What are we doing on that? The first element, we are upgrading our industrial parks, 3,700 of them, the industrial townships, creating plug-and-play models, creating a scenario. So what is happening? You're shortening the time distance from the time you begin your plant construction to the day you come up with your first commercial production. The moment you've squeezed this timeline, the return on your capital goes up. That's just one of the elements. The second is, you know about this huge infrastructure buildup which is happening in India. 70% of India of 2030 yet to be constructed. One of your former ambassadors said that in his farewell speech. It's absolutely true. What is going to happen in that? That early double-digit logistics cost is going to come down to a single digit. When I'm moving from Delhi to Calcutta, it may take me 6 to 7 days, which I'll be able to do in 36 hours, which is already beginning. I'm having railway corridors. My port times are coming down. I've decreased that time. I've made things now far more transparent. In the next 90 days, we'll be launching India's first single window for all approvals. An investor comes onto a single window, will have his application, puts it all in, puts all his documents once, and all the state clearances and the central clearances come in through that in a completely transparent manner. Will it be 100% ongoing? It will take a little time as we start bringing it up. But what is happening? You're de-risking the business models. You're removing asymmetry of informations. And at the same point of time, you're creating that ease of access to this biggest market opportunity which sits there. For the first time in human economic history, Nisha, and I'm sorry I'm taking a little longer on this one, a brand new company gets 100 million new customers in 180 days. Anywhere in the world, give me an example of that economic history as an example on that one. That is where India is headed. So the move is not just viability of business, it is profitability of business. And the other element which is coming now is absorption of capital. So what are we doing now where that is concerned? That the government is, that national infrastructure pipeline, which was launched about a few months ago by the Honorable Finance Minister. And even if you go on to my India investment grid, you have over 10,000 projects, which any investor can log into and start a dialogue with the promoters directly. What is that doing? It has increased our absorption capacity of capital, which is a very critical element at a point of inflection for any economy to take off. And that is what this government has done. It has actually created projects where that capital can be absorbed and partnerships can be created. And I'm getting an amazing level of return. Do I have a minute on that one or no? If you have a minute, I can share with you some very interesting statistic which I get every day from the India investment grid. If you want, I can let you know.
Please.
Okay. Then now that you've told me, then let me find out where that is. Okay. There's a 283% increase in the overall engagement on the India investment grid between yesterday and today. 283%. I was just trying to find out where the entire details of which countries are coming in. And a large number of new countries, which were not looking at India in our earlier pool set, are now coming in. They may be from South America, they may be from Eastern Europe, they may be from the eastern side. So all these things put in together, Nisha, where else will you go? The imperatives of being in India, I think every boardroom today has to explain if they are not in India.
So, Deepak, I'm going to come back to you in a few minutes on another set of questions about some of what you alluded to, which is on kind of the future technologies, on how we're looking at a decarbonized economy, electric vehicles, and ways in which India is preparing to move in that direction. But before I do that, Adrian, I wanted to turn to you. There's another question in the chat that's talking about collaboration in health and in education. And I know that Sanam has been particularly active in that higher education space. Talk to us a little bit about the ways in which the U.S. and India are trying to collaborate in higher education.
Thank you. Well, I think Diane referred to the strategic collaboration that the US and India have regarding the pandemic, and I know there's a tremendous amount of work happening there, both at central government level, but also with the companies behind it, and perhaps you may want to comment. On the education side, of course, India was fast becoming the spotlight market for US institutions as the situation with China cooled a little bit earlier in 2019, 2020, prior to the pandemic. And of course, the pandemic and the situation has just accelerated the appetite in diversification of students. And India is a very attractive market, as Deepak said. He himself came to study in the United States and benefited from the networks and experience I'm sure that he gained through that period of study. But what you're seeing now, Nisha, is really quite amazing, is that universities who are offering online learning and looking at transnational education partnerships with Indian institutions are opening up an entirely new cohort of students who previously couldn't afford a full 2-year master's or a 4-year undergrad degree in the United States from India. And that in itself creates a massive opportunity. And that's come at a time that through the pandemic, India launched its national education policy, which has very bold ambitions to have internationalization at the heart of it. And so you've almost got this perfect storm of opportunity coming together where we certainly are working 24/7 at the moment, putting Indian universities and US partners together. And that's a genuine two-way equation. It's on the knowledge sharing. We're looking at setting up collaborative research agendas. Of course, this opportunity to run dual learning programs, a combination online as well as hybrid with in-campus experience as and when that opens up. And as Deepak said, India's doing a lot of work on improving its industrial parks in India. One of the things that we're working on with a number of states is driving special knowledge zones and actually creating the right conducive environments for US and Indian universities to partner in India to not just develop world-leading IP, but to truly commercialize that. And I think that's amongst the other opportunities, one that we are genuinely excited about over the next few years.
Thank you, Adrian. I have a couple of questions that have come in as well on tariffs, the tariff structure on the export of raw materials for hydrocarbon and for pharma, as well as kind of the revocation of GSP benefits and what the impact has been on that. And certainly I know that is a area of discussion in the trade negotiations between the U.S. and India that are carrying over from the last administration. But Nishit, I'm going to ask you maybe to talk a little bit about the tax and tariff implications and how you're looking at that. And then I'm going to come back to Deepak and to Diane for a couple of final questions and comments. But Nisha, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've been tracking on not only on the changes in the tax structure, but also some of the tariff issues that you think are constraining the U.S.-India trade?
I think primarily as far as taxation is concerned, I think we have come a long way. And as far as the taxation structure for corporations are concerned, uh, the income tax rates have been reduced to level of 25%, basically. And if you are manufacturing, then it has gone down to even 15%. And so it's a significant reduction in tax. In addition, there are a number of free zones and other ones. One can export and one could avail global opportunities. And there again, you got 100% tax exemption. Even in financial services, as I mentioned earlier, GIFT City provides 100% tax exemption for a period of 10 years within the first 15 years, any period. So on tax side, a lot of changes have come, a lot of reliefs have been announced. A couple of things that have happened, of course, where, there are some wrinkles, we'll have to sort them out. For example, this year, abolition of the advanced ruling system that existed, that has gone and it has been relegated to bureaucratic. And unfortunately, the announcement has been that the ruling even is not binding. So, the whole purpose of going for advanced ruling, I'm sure some of these wrinkles will be cleared up. But in light of the larger changes that have happened, I think on the whole, we have come to a great regime at times, faceless tax administration. So, the corruption is expected to go down because now you don't know who is the tax officer with whom you're dealing. It's not personal. And, those kind of measures have been taken, including one important measure that has been taken is that the ability of the tax department to reopen your cases, which was a major concern for most taxpayers, that your case is settled and then after some years you are reopened. That period has been reduced to a level of 3 years, which is, again, as I said, that there are many changes that have happened. I hope that our trade between the US and India, I think, as far as the bilateral tax treaty is concerned, I think there are some changes required. And I would not go too deep into that, but I think as far as taxes are concerned, foreign tax is considered to be a cost. Domestic tax is often perceived as obligation. I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but so more care we take, I think it will reduce the cost of doing business in India. I'll stop here for a moment.
Thank
So
you.
I know
Thank you.
that hands are
Yeah.
being raised. To stop.
Thank you, Nishit. And I know we have come upon the hour, but I wanted to give a final round to both Deepak and to Diane. And Diane, I'll let you close us out. And so Deepak, we talked a little bit about kind of the future-facing technologies. Wanted to see if you wanted to talk a little bit about what the opportunity is here as we look at trying to support kind of leapfrog technology. And how India is really thinking about. I know you've had a major drive on electric vehicles. Diane talked about the climate focus, and certainly I think Prime Minister has been very forward-leaning on meeting the Paris goals that India set out, but also creating the economy of the future. So I wanted to give you just a quick opportunity to frame that, and then Diane, I'll turn to you to close us out.
Two quick points on that, Nisha. One is the recent budget. I think we forgot to mention about that in this one. We have this annual budget, but I think this budget was not just an annual financial exercise. This budget was a clear roadmap of India 2030. And this roadmap was showing you India bottom up and top down. So we've discussed the bottom up. You're looking at agriculture, education, healthcare, all that, and each of my 600 plus thousand villages coming up the curve. But there is a top down to that. He spoke about space. It speaks about R&D. I mean, please don't forget, India is today the #1 R&D destination for multinationals in the world. In the past 55 months, I've opened over 1,000 R&D centers of global multinationals outside of their head office. That R&D itself is looking at everything from space to materials to EV to battery to all new, and the innovation. Nisha, you know it better than anyone else. The frugal innovation which is happening here from those startups and those innovations and all those, and what this budget also clearly brings out to you, they're removing the stops, they're getting rid of the inefficiencies, They're getting rid of where capital is not being employed in the most positive manner. And here is in India, which is open to partner with the world. It's one of the few countries during this pandemic, and this was a global report, where you still see an economy opening up to global partners while everybody else is creating fences. Look at what we've done for insurance, for example, in this budget. So that was a clear roadmap going ahead, that this is a country which is ready for 2030, which is ready to be on the high table, which is all set to partner with the world and build on its own strengths to add value, not just to itself, but to the entire world in their global supply chains. Thank you, Nisha. Back to you.
Thank you, Deepak. And Diane, I'm gonna close us out with some thoughts from you on, we've talked about the fact that this is a corridor that is really poised to take off, and it's great to see the level of ambition that all of our panelists today have demonstrated. But we also know that there is work ahead of us in trying to harmonize and align our approaches. You have certainly been very much at the forefront of those conversations with USTR, with Commerce, and with the Indian Commerce Ministry and other ministries. Talk us through a little bit of what we can look forward to as we try to realize and unleash that potential of the U.S. India corridor.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for including me in this panel. It is wonderful to be reunited with such great friends, both panelists, but all of your participants. And I have been sneaking a peek at the chat, so I've seen some of the other comments that your membership and your guests have offered, and I will take those back and share them more broadly from a USG perspective. So this has really been a wonderful hour and 5 minutes at this moment, and I just really appreciate it. And as always, I've learned more and picked up more. I really appreciated Nishit's identifying of what he sees as industries that are even going to be more critical when it comes to the future and where there are opportunities. And I'm adding them to the list of industries that we've been focusing on for some time. So a couple of things that I'll say. Number one, I do want to say that the CEO Forum, which is a really important organization because, as Deepak knows, we take our cue from the private sector. It is true. I mean, people are only going to come if it's a good ecosystem, if it's an environment that works. Our job is to make sure, as is yours, Nisha, is to make sure that we let people know of those changes, of those improvements, acknowledge the challenges. I mean, we can't just say that everything is, a bed of roses. We have to make that commitment to work shoulder to shoulder to solve some of these problems, to create the kind of dynamic that's going to get us to the 500. Along those lines, I really do like the title of, this series, but the fact that you are focusing on a more localized level, because we're two enormous countries with very significant economies. And as impressive as it is at the center level, whether it's the Prime Minister's initiatives that we followed and we've heard about as recently as in the budget address, or it's the U.S. administration's efforts to make sure that our ties are as strong as they can when we look at it as an Indo-Pacific partner, not just U.S. India corridor, but the Indo-Pacific partnership that's very, very important as well. But we have to take it in bite-sized pieces. And so focusing on the states, focusing on the efforts that they've made. And I give kudos to the government of India for taking the World Bank rankings and adapting them to actually reflecting how the states themselves are doing. So I think that's a really important piece, so that when Deepak talks about the top down, and he talks about the bottom up, that's really what we're talking about. And I'm very pleased that at Commerce, we've been hosting these state spotlight series. We featured California, Michigan, Texas, but as well Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana. The idea being that we want to expose companies and investors to the opportunities, give them more knowledge, give them connections, Because again, we're speaking at a very high level here. As Adrian knows very, very well, this is all about the last mile. This is all about how we actually make that final connection and who can help us to get there. And Sonam S4 has just been doing a phenomenal job, along with Nishith Desai as a trusted advisor to companies on both sides who are looking to reach that economic goal, to reach the profit goal. They're not doing it altruistically, as Deepak said. They're doing it because it makes good business sense, and there are all kinds of derived benefits. The final comment I'll make is because I've had the pleasure of traveling to India, both with Secretary Pritzker previously and then with Secretary Ross as well, that in both instances, so this is not it's not a partisan message. The message that our top officials have always conveyed is, let us come to a point where we can share success stories, where we can talk about how we work to solve problems together, to increase and improve market access challenges, to eliminate the challenges, to improve access, because it's those stories that make all the difference in terms of companies wanting to engage. If they feel a sense of confidence, if they've heard from a company that they respect, that they've been able to make it work. It might have been complex. It might have to be customized to India as a unique destination in the same way the United States. But that ultimately problems were solved and companies are doing well and thriving. That's where we want to get. Because it's not about the U.S. government or the Indian government putting out new programs or making important speeches and statements. It's really at that person-to-person level to say, yep, we're there, and we're there because it's an incredibly important market, and we're succeeding. And in some cases, customizing because of the uniqueness of the market, but we're succeeding. So that's what we're striving for, are those positive success stories, and that's how you're going to get to the 500 billion.
Well, that is a fantastic note on which to conclude this program. And I want to encourage all of us to think about the successes that we want to be able to share and spotlight in the U.S. India corridor. It is certainly what we here at USIBC are focused on. And we look forward to working with all of you in creating more and more success across both of our countries and in ways that benefit both of our societies. So thank you very much to all of our panelists that have joined us today. Really excited that we've been able to bring this very impactful conversation to you. Diane, Deepak, Nishith, and Adrian, thank you very much for all of what you are doing from inside government and from the business community to really strengthen and enhance the U.S. India corridor. And I want to thank all of our guests and our partners who have really prioritized the U.S. India corridor. We work very closely with SIDO and the National Governors Association to ensure that the U.S. India corridor is one that is active and robust in both directions, in attracting Indian investment into the United States, which I know Select USA is very focused on, as well as in strengthening investment flows into India. So thank you all, and we look forward to continuing to engage with you on this series, Accelerate to 500. Abhishek Kishore on our team is leading that effort, and look forward to more programming in this in the weeks to come. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Nisha,
thank
just
you all.
1 minute. Nisha, before you let us go, one thing, and I'm sure Diane will join me in this, and to your entire team, and to you especially, thank you for being the anchor and the pillar of this corridor.
Oh, well,
your work and your support and your team is exceptional. Truly, and thank you personally and every other way for doing all what you're doing for us.
Thank you, Nisha. I support that, and I think thank you for the launch of the report. Hopefully that will be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be sending this report out to all of you who joined us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Nisha.
Have a great day and a great week.
Thank you, Nisha. This is Senator Connie. I wanted to have a question, but I guess I'll send it out to Diane. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.